2012 to 2015, mid 2015. This is from the time that she started dating Nicholas to the time of the unaliving. Nicholas goaded on in 2015 said, I truly do worship her to the point there is nothing I would not do for her. On April 6, 2012, a police report documented the discovery of 33 pieces of mail belonging to DeeDee Blanchard, along with a single photograph discarded in the ditch a little over 2 miles from her house. The photograph was of a female. At the time, the significance of this find was unclear, though, as is often the case, what seems inconsequential in the moment can later assume unexpected importance. Please record courtesy of Into Louise podcast. DeeDee's autopsy later confirmed she had at some point been diagnosed with endometrial cancer. Please, you guys know this, that DeeDee was really sick at the time of her death. We all joke, like, where was DeeDee when Gypsy was hula dancing? Where was DeeDee when Gypsy was doing the Squidward? Where was DeeDee? Well, I mean, I think sometimes she was just in bed sick, probably not feeling too well. So DeeDee's autopsy later confirmed she had at some point been diagnosed with endometrial cancer, which likely explains her hysterectomy on June 24, 2012, at the age of 45. She was baptized at her local church vineyard. The timing suggests one of the two scenarios, either a sincere religious awakening or a sobering encounter with her own mortality. 2 days later, on June 26, DeeDee and Gypsy visited Hope Lodge in Kansas City, where DeeDee had her head shaved and donated her hair to benefit adults and children with cancer. While DeeDee and Gypsy were regular attendees at VisionCon in 2009, 10, 11, and 13, there is no photographic evidence of their participation in 2012, suggesting that they may have missed that year's event. The exact timing of DeeDee's diagnosis remains unclear, as do the details of her treatment, if any. However, the consequences of events indicates it may have occurred in late 2011 and early 2012. Gypsy later told Nick that offing DeeDee would be a mercy on unaliving because of her cancer. Okay, so are you taking her out because she is a horrible mother who is subjecting her daughter to all kind of horrible stuff? Are you taking her out because it's a mercy? It's a mercy on unaliving. So, given Gypsy's history of making questionable claims, including assuring Nick she was a Virgo intacta, this statement must be viewed with caution. So, Virgo intacta, this means virgin, intact, unbroken. So, together, Virgo intacta was historically used by doctors to describe someone believed to be a virgin with an intact hymen. It is an old, outdated term and not considered medically accurate today. Okay, so wow, didn't know that. You learn something new every day. It has also been suggested that Gypsy's motive may have been less about sparing her mother from suffering and more about avoiding the responsibility of caring for a seriously ill parent. While speculative, it is a reminder that in this case, few explanations are free from complexity or unsettling undertones. What's interesting about this is when you look at the possible motive. Now we know the possibility that DeeDee was ABUSIVE to Gypsy is slim to none. She seemed like a pretty good mom when you really look at all the facts. So it wouldn't be a mercy. I mean, what kind of child wants to off their mom because their mom's in such bad health shape? Not many, unless you have something really bad wrong with you. So when you really look at the possibility that Gypsy wanted her mom taken out because she did not want to have the responsibility of caring for her mom, when you then look at the fact that her mom cared for her, pushed her in the wheelchair, I mean, there's one of the last videos of Gypsy and DeeDee is of DeeDee pushing Gypsy across the road to, I think, like a hospital. And I mean, DeeDee was like big and overweight. She had her own health issues. And there she is pushing Gypsy, trying to take care of her. How ironic that DeeDee spends her life taking care of her child, her medically fragile child. But the moment it flips to where Gypsy may have to take care of DeeDee, she starts planning to offer mom. Wow. Warning, the content on this page contains a description of sexual nature with which some adults may find distressing. This material is not suitable for children, and reader discretion is strongly advised. Not long after the not pew-pewing DeeDee incident, the allegedly terrified Gypsy decided to shell for fear again and began sneaking into DeeDee's laptop while her mother slept. In Gypsy Rose Blanchard's versions of events, this was roughly the equivalent of poking a sleeping lion in the eye and hoping for the best. Her own laptop had, of course, met a timely demise, twice at the hands of her mother with a hammer. AKA, that didn't happen. Chrissy Blanchard recalled smashed the laptop with a hammer. And when it was time to get a new one, DeeDee called Rod, wanting a new laptop, and sent off the laptop, and it was, look what mom got you. So, okay, according to Christy, DeeDee busted Gypsy's laptop with a hammer. Gypsy also said that too. And then, rather than DeeDee buying a new one, she got Rod to buy one. And then she would tell Gypsy, look what mama got you. But Gypsy tells it differently. She insists she never had a laptop of her own. However, Gypsy does talk about having a laptop in one of her interviews, and then she talks about how she never had a laptop. So, which is why she resorted to using DeeDee's. In this case, Christy may want to take a seat and stay seated. A quick side note: whatever became of the pew pew, possibly buried in the backyard with a voodoo mason jar, but no one's admitting anything. So here, Gypsy, armed with DeeDee's laptop and another golden opportunity to escape the butcher of Springfield, naturally she uses it not to contact authorities, friends, or literally anyone who could help her, but to trawl the internet for yet another boyfriend. For Gypsy, that amounted to the same thing as an escape. For Nicholas Godejohn, it was the beginning of the end. In 2018, Gypsy reflected on her choices, telling ABC News, "I beat myself up about it all the time, but I had to understand my mind frame back then. I was always so afraid of her, afraid of the consequences after. An understandable sentiment, though apparently those fears dissolved when the potential consequence was being called in the middle of the night, messaging strangers on the very laptop her GUN toting mother guarded like a state secret." By October 2012, Gypsy had updated her profile to a Christian dating website, describing herself as a 20-year-old petite, 5 foot tall, brown eyed, brown hair Catholic girl looking for a long-term relationship and children. Or, if you prefer plain English, she was looking for someone to remove DeeDee from the picture. Profession, artist, public speaker. Educational level, some school. You reading this, Dr. Phil? Soon enough, she stumbled across 23-year-old Wisconsin resident Nicholas Godejohn. Average build, 6 foot tall, brown hair, hazel eyes, non smoking, non drinking, unemployed at the moment, Catholic, looking for a marriage partner, and looking for the one and only one for me. Bingo! Nicholas Godejohn's life was about to change in ways he couldn't have imagined and wouldn't have wanted to. At the time, Nick's hobbies included playing video games, uploading music videos to YouTube, and as he put it, looking for love. When asked about life before Gypsy, he said, I actually was basically alone. In hindsight, he might have considered that a blessing. Below are 2 videos Nicholas Godejohn uploaded to his YT gaming channel before he met Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Nick's old YT channel can be seen here. I don't know why. I don't know why. It just says picture. Gypsy spots Nick's profile, decides he's cute, and sends him a digital wink. Nick returns the compliment, and the pair began their first exchange. Gypsy tells the lonely Wisconsin, "I'm a little embarrassed. This is my first time on an online dating site, but I thought it might be nice to meet new people and maybe find love too. If I could, I'd go out with you. You sound a lot like me." Nick replies with unfiltered sincerity, "I would be blessed to be able to be with a beauty like yourself. You definitely have a beauty inside. I can actually feel how pure you are from the inside. Only if purity could be measured in capital letters." After 4 days of online conversation, they are officially in a committed relationship. 4 days, which Gypsy proudly announces via a newly minted joint Facebook account, Nicholas Bella Rose. And into the center of the storm stepped Nicholas Godejohn, blissfully unaware of the incoming weather. Nick later described meeting Gypsy as, "I don't know how to explain it. The way we just clicked. It made it seem like we were right for each other." That was in his police interview in 2015. In 2024, Gypsy reflected on her first impressions. "I thought Nick was a stable person that has life together, and he was going to take care of me, and everything was going to be just fine." It's likely Nick was banking on those same qualities in her. Despite our best efforts combing through their 2012 archives of ChristianDatingForFree.com, neither Gypsy nor Nick's profile has surfaced, perhaps lost to the digital void or widely erased. Nick had only one brief relationship prior to meeting Gypsy. She told him he was her first ever boyfriend. She also claims she was a virgin. Cole. A FOIA release in March 2025, courtesy of Into the Weeds podcast, confirms that during her exclusive relationship with Nick, Gypsy was still in contact with another man, Dan Gladwell. Monogamy, it seems, was more of a suggestion. In 2018, Gypsy recalled, "We, Nick and Gypsy, started to talk about our lives, and we liked each other from the very beginning. I did tell him that I was in a wheelchair from the get-go, and he seemed accepting. He was like, 'It doesn't matter to me. I love you all the same.' It was just different to find someone that accepted me, even though I knew I could walk. I still thought it was nice of him to accept me as I am." However, during her testimony at Nick's 2018 trial, Gypsy gave a slightly different version. When asked, "When did you tell Nick about the wheelchair?" she replied, "About a month after we met." A month? Of course, being a rather generous interpretation of from the get-go. Around this time, DeeDee apparently experienced a parental eureka moment and began locking Gypsy's laptop away at night. This obstacle was short-lived. Gypsy, describing herself as petrified, but nevertheless an experienced kleptomaniac, admitted, "I stole a cell phone," which she then connected to the home Wi-Fi. Gypsy would later describe the early months with Nick as lighthearted, filled with conversations about hypothetical honeymoons, dream wedding locations, and places to travel, and normal stuff. But she adds, as it progressed, things got weird. For Nick, certainly. According to Gypsy, about a year into the relationship, she revealed to Nick that she could walk. Nick's response was that he wasn't surprised. He had psychic abilities. Alternatively, he may have simply ran a Google search and found the widely available photograph of Gypsy swimming with dolphins and stingrays at age 12. What Gypsy does not mention in any documentary or interview is that in a 2014 video, transcript available, she told Nick it was entirely her choice to fake the need for a wheelchair. Her choice. Hers. Nick then allegedly made another disclosure. Not only was he psychic, but he had multiple personality disorder. While a clinical diagnosis of MPD is doubtful, Nick did describe to Gypsy an alter ego named Victor, a 500-year-old vampire representing the violent part of himself. Gypsy's reaction was understated. I started to be a little bit more scared. Most people would have ran for the hills. Gypsy stayed, by her own account, because she was desperate for affection. Or perhaps for that word. The vampire motive was not entirely new to Gypsy's orbit. Dan Gladwell, a man she had previously been in contact with, also had a fascination with vampires. So much so that in 2011, he named his son after a vampire character he had portrayed in a live action role playing game. A 2015 crime scene photo from DeeDee's house even shows a support vampires rosette pin to the kitchen fridge. Whether the vampire theme in Gypsy and Nick's relationship originated with him or her is uncertain. What is certain is that there are no known images of Nicholas Godejohn dressed as anyone other than himself. The same cannot be said for Dan Gladwell. By 2024, in her memoir, My Time to Stand, Gypsy had aged Victor considerably. He is presented as 3,000 years old. I never heard that before. In the same book, she also claimed Nick was the only adult who knew she could walk. This, despite earlier in the very same text acknowledging that Dan knew as well. So yeah, in her book, I do remember, like, apparently she said that Nick was the only person that knew, and then she said Dan knew. So even in her own book, she contradicted herself. Gypsy was 21 years old when she stole the cell phone, apparently motivated less by fear of being beaten with a coat hanger and more by an overwhelming need to maintain contact with Nick. This was neither her first nor last shoplifting incident. In February 2012, a Springfield newsletter article reported that DeeDee had been apprehended for shoplifting at a Hobby Lobby store in Springfield. The article, which described Gypsy as paralyzed from the waist down, detailed how craft supplies were found hidden in 20-year-old Gypsy's wheelchair. The scheme unraveled when a store manager spotted a black feather poking out between Gypsy's legs and the wheelchair. The mind boggles. DeeDee later claimed she would never have permitted a search of Gypsy's wheelchair had she known it contained stolen goods, a statement that for once may have been entirely truthful. A separate account posted on Facebook in June 2015 alleged that years earlier, in 2006 and 2007, the same Hobby Lobby had witnessed a similar scene. The poster claimed DeeDee accused Gypsy of attempting to steal scrapbook paper by concealing it under her wheelchair. At the time, DeeDee and Gypsy were living in Aurora. This would have been the closest Hobby Lobby to their home. DeeDee's official criminal record contained only a single offense, passing a dud check in 1997. That either suggests she was an exceptionally skilled shoplifter, worthy of the Fagin label, or that her daughter had a burgeoning kleptomania problem of her own. Am I saying that right? According to police reports, Nick's cousin, Ricky Godejohn, told investigators after the unaliving that Nick had confided in him about Gypsy's habit of stealing lingerie from stores and sending Nick photographs of herself wearing it. No fear of consequences, no apparent hesitation. An entitled princess through and through. A FOIA release in June 2025, courtesy of Myra 171, added yet another layer. Gypsy, the off-frame helpless victim of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, had allegedly been selling medical supplies on eBay, including DeeDee's diabetes test strips and her own feeding tubes, using one of her secret email accounts. One suspects this revelation may come as a shock to Dr. Steele, Dr. Flasherstein, and Dr. Fieldman. So this is one of Gypsy's secret email accounts that was selling her medical supplies and some of DeeDee's medical supplies. I always wonder, like, where is Gypsy getting the money for, for bus tickets to send to Nicholas for him to come in? In her 2024 memoir, My Time to Stand, Gypsy recounts the Hobby Lobby incident with a whimsical flourish, describing the stolen goods as gluey, sticky, sparkly. A contemporaneous news report, however, lists them as rather more prosca. Why do I use all these words and nobody knows how to say? A news report, however, lists them as 2 packages of stickers, a border, stamp pads, and 2 pieces of unfinished wood, none of which could reasonably be described as gluey, sticky, or sparkly. Moreover, Gypsy was 20 years old at the time, not the 9-year-old her memoir's tone might lead readers to imagine, casting further doubt on her claim that her mother made her steal them. Gypsy told Dr. Phil in 2019 he, Nick, had multiple personalities that were violent and scary. He said that he was a 500-year-old vampire named Victor. In her earlier 2017 interview, she went further, describing one of Nick's other personalities, the black one, who allegedly spoke in a horrible, scary voice about unaliving her and taking her booty, even threatening, I will off you so bad they will never find your body. And still, Gypsy said, I thought I was in love with the good side of him, she explained. Though bingo might have been the more honest answer. Bingo. Rather than distance herself from a man who frightened her or repeatedly threatened her, Gypsy says she instead created alter egos to match his. I would have done just about anything to make him stay, to make him happy, she told Gypsy's Revenge in 2018. According to her, it was Nick's idea. He talked to me one day and he was just like, I would like my other personalities to have a girlfriend. So she obliged, inventing 5 of them. At Nick's trial, the list emerged: Ruby, Candy, Kitty, Bella, and Demona. Gypsy explained she created them to fit Nick's own personas. Demona, she said, was half werewolf, half human. Kitty was a childlike girl. Ruby was her evil side. Candy, in her own words, was more of the slutty side of me. Bella got less explanation, perhaps because Bella most notably recorded activity was Gypsy in character sitting on the living room couch and licking a knife 2 weeks before DeeDee's unaliving. When Dr. Phil quizzed her on the details, the pauses between answers suggest Gypsy hadn't anticipated this particular pop quiz. Kitty matched Nick's little boy's personality. Candy went with that personality that's more sexual. Ruby, she confirmed without hesitation, was for Victor, the 500-year-old vampire. And still, the lion slept just off the living room where Bella would perform her knife licking routine, mere feet away from the bathroom where Ruby would pose for videos, while DeeDee apparently kept a knife and a GUN close at hand. This, we are told, was the point at which Gypsy was most afraid of her mother. In sworn testimony, Dan claimed he developed a taste for power exchange role playing from Gypsy, who sent him nude photos, dressed in costumes, and cycled through her various fictitious names. So Gypsy had some of these fictitious names when she was messing around with Dan, which was before and throughout Nicholas. Gypsy claims BDSM crept into her relationship with Nick, which she insists was weird and scary when Nick introduced her to it. Nick started talking about something called BDSM, and at first I didn't know what it was, so I looked it up. And once I looked it up, I was like, I don't want to do this. And then he kind of just talked me into it, and I was like, it'll be fine, try this with me. And so I agreed to it. I was taught that a woman's role is to just be submissive and the man is dominant. So I didn't think it was that outlandish. Then his ex had messaged me. She told me, he's a really bad guy. He thinks he's a vampire and he's into all this dominant, submissive stuff. And I was thinking, it's just an ex. She's bad mouthing him. She doesn't know anything. She's jealous, blah, 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 blah. But she was right. One word: Dan. Dan testified at Nick's 2022 evidentiary hearing that it was Gypsy back in 2011 who introduced him to power exchange role playing, something he heard of but hadn't really had a front row seat of until Gypsy came along. And where might Gypsy have picked it up? Wild guess, David Blanchard. David Blanchard links to BDSM and the unaliving of DeeDee Blanchard. In 2017, Gypsy reflected on Nick. I really don't know what's wrong with him, but it's not like I had a boyfriend before. A fair comment, if we accept that. If we accept that the boyfriend excludes Dan, or the older man in the hotel room, or the 4 men aged 30 to 35 to whom she sent topless photos to in 2010 and 2011. Gypsy told Dr. Phil, I was very, very naive back then. I'd never had a boyfriend. True, just a friend she had sex with, and several other friends she sent nude photos to. For the record, there's no evidence Nick had ever engaged in role playing before he met Gypsy. Yet, judging from the photo evidence, her initial fear, I started to be a little bit more scared and hesitant. I didn't want to do this. Seemed to fade quickly. Soon, she appears to embrace the BDSM theme with the gusto of a true team player, though perhaps not quite in the spirit Nick's ex had been warning her about. Let's take a short breather from Gypsy Rose Blanchard's gobbledygook and remind ourselves exactly who we're dealing with. Since her arrest in 2015 for her role in her mother's unaliving, Gypsy has cast herself as the perennial victim: DeeDee abusive, Nick manipulative, Dan predatory. According to Gypsy, the entire supporting cast of her life's drama was out to get her. Her well-rehearsed narrative had been consistent. DeeDee stayed on top of her, figuratively and literally, never left her alone, barred her from friends or freedom, and inflicted unnecessary medical procedures. Nick supposedly terrified her, manipulated her, and introduced her to BDSM. In other words, Gypsy always was under someone else's control. And then came the FOIA request. Brace yourselves. In late 2024-2025, official court documents released following a FOIA request by Into the Weeds podcast pulled the curtain back on the real Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Some of the records provided to the right and below speak for themselves. You might need a moment to read them and another to recover. In 2018, Gypsy testified as a defense witness at Nicholas Godejohn's trial. While under oath, she swore to the following. Nick was her first boyfriend. Dan Gladwell doesn't label himself as such, but Gypsy concedes he was a sexual partner. Devon lied under oath. Nick introduced her to role play with alter egos. Gypsy herself admits she was surfacing inside Gypsy and role playing with men as early as 2010 and 2011. Devon lied under oath. Nick was always the master. She was always the slave. See My Baby Gypsy and Mistress Demona's random video where Gypsy announces she's now the dominant and Nick's the slave. So Devon lied under oath. Nick scripted most of her videos. Out of 154 videos, only a fraction show evidence of Nick scripting. Devon lied under oath. She only did certain acts because Nick told her to. In Demona to Sir Black One, Gypsy boasts she can overwhelm and even R him by force. Debunked, she lied under oath. She engaged in great fantasies reluctantly, just to indulge Nick. In reality, she's seen on video enthusiastically engaging in solo activity for nearly 12 minutes. Debunked, lied under oath. The legal term for all of this is perjury. Dr. Theodore Wasserman, a pediatric neuropsychologist hired for Nick's appeal, summarized their dynamic neatly. Gypsy held the stick, Gypsy dangled the carrot. And yes, there's more. Following their arrest, a forensic examination of both Nick and Gypsy's phone revealed a number of videos, none of which aligned neatly with Gypsy's claim of being an unwilling participant in her own life. One standout example, a 15-minute video recorded on May 26, 2015, less than 2 weeks before DeeDee's unaliving. In it, Gypsy, wearing a red wig, a black jacket, she introduces Nick to Ruby, her evil side, while addressing him as sir. The setting, DeeDee's bathroom. The proximity, mere feet from where DeeDee was sleeping, in a room without a door. For someone who says she had to sneak onto DeeDee's laptop while her mother slept, Gypsy displayed remarkable confidence in recording a lengthy, revealing, and explicit performance in the middle of the night. Wouldn't a woman who's supposedly living in fear of a hammer-wielding mother who allegedly slept with a knife at her bed have been worried about being caught? Apparently not. The same could be asked about another video bluntly titled Come with Demona, in which Gypsy shouts explicit instructions at Master Nick. If DeeDee was as omnipresent and terrifying as claimed, where exactly was she at during this broadcast level performance? Equally telling is Ruby's instructions to her perfect man, recorded about 3 weeks before the murder. According to the Greene County Sheriff's Office supplemental report, Gypsy boasts that she likes to get in trouble. She isn't sorry when she gets caught, and that her caring is broken. She claims she fears only Nicholas's evil side, and that she will do anything with him, including unaliving, rape, and assault. She even outlines scenarios for unaliving other women, promising lots of gore and blood if a rival tried to be Nicholas's girlfriend, and offering to commit joint unalivings. Family members, she admits, would get a more restrained execution. She stated she'd allow Nicholas to grape her anytime he wanted, but drew the line at physical ASSAULT, clarifying that rough sex and grape sex are acceptable. The video also included a guide tour through her other alter egos, Kitty, Candy, Bella, each with their own romantic tendencies. Ruby, however, was the mastermind, adept at stealing, planning crimes, producing very, very bad ideas like robbery, rape, vandalism, and vehicle theft. Mischief and mayhem, she insists, should always be planned by her. Again, where was DeeDee? And where exactly was Gypsy's fear? For someone who once claimed she knew nothing about BDSM and didn't want to do this, Gypsy adapted at an astonishing pace. Rob Blanchard told the media in 2024 Gypsy was scared shitless of her mom. The evidence suggests otherwise. Ruby was not an alter ego. Ruby was Gypsy Rose Blanchard. The digital archive didn't end there. On May 22nd, 2015, Gypsy sent Nick a second video, filmed in DeeDee's empty bedroom. She approaches her mother's bed, points at the pillow, and makes a repeated motion like that towards it. This is not an abstract fantasy. It was an instructional video on how she wanted her mother unalive. Around the same time, she had also photographed DeeDee sleeping in the same bed. Fear nowhere to be seen. A third video in which she appears as Demona shows Gypsy threaten Nick. If he didn't do what she wanted, she would take Gypsy from him. And she did, masterfully. Some readers may recall the pink mandolin suit Gypsy wore at VidyaCon 2013. The suit was crafted by a high-ranking member of Squad 66, the Temple Raiders, the same group that had awarded Gypsy an honorary membership back in 2009, and who also worked at VidyaCon itself. David Blanchard, DeeDee's good friend, was not only a fellow Temple Raider, but also the president of VidyaCon in 2013. He was close friends with the man who made the suit. According to the suit maker, he believed Gypsy was 15 years old in October 2012 when he agreed to the commission. In reality, Gypsy was 21. David Blanchard, who in his 2015 police interview put on an Oscar-worthy performance of shock upon learning Gypsy could walk, admitted he knew she had ran away with Dan in 2011. It's difficult to imagine the suit's maker being unaware of this little escapade, given how quickly news travels in such tightly knit fandom circles. Yeah, he knew she could walk. This we had no idea about Gypsy's real age or mobility narrative is about as convincing as the stormtroopers' aim. The suit was made well after the man in the hotel room incident in 2009 and well after the Dan episode in 2011. There was gossip within the VidyaCon community about Gypsy flirting with older men, gossip that would not have been confined to the dealer's room. The organizers would have heard it. They would have discussed it, which leaves two options. Either the entire VidyaCon leadership was astonishingly oblivious in the environment built on obsessive attention to detail, or they're lying. And if they are lying, one has to ask, what did they stand to gain? And what did they stand to lose by keeping the truth buried? On March 11, 2013, at around 7 p.m., Nicholas Godejohn was arrested at his local McDonald's for disorderly conduct and carrying a concealed weapon. According to the incident, officers responded at around 7:18 p.m. to report a man viewing certain type of material on his laptop and touching himself inappropriately in view of customers and employees. John admitted to the behavior and was found to be carrying a knife without a permit. He was arrested and transported to the police station for processing. Nick told officers he had been there for 9 hours, not because McDonald's is renowned for its ambience, but because he was using the free Wi-Fi to perform a software update that took several hours. He said he bought food at the start but refused to leave when the manager confronted him because his update wasn't done. Nick also admitted that he watched that kind of, movies and images during his visit. We don't know exactly what he was watching, but Gypsy's BDSM videos and photos come to mind. Contrary to the headline-friendly myth promoted since his 2015 arrest for DeeDee's Unalive, Nick wasn't engaged in a 9-hour public marathon of fries and no. What literally was reported was that he was there for 9 hours fondling himself. The police report shows the McDonald's was far from full, and customers alleged that at one point he fondled himself. Nick's own account was he was scratching himself inside his trousers. The media, however, didn't let the truth spoil a good soundbite. John also has a criminal past. In 2013, he was arrested after investigators say he was watching blank and fondling himself at a McDonald's restaurant for 9 hours. Police finding a large knife during the arrest. Mommy did endurance. He was already convicted of disorderly conduct, caught fondling himself while eating French fries and watching blank on his laptop. Dr. Phil, the killer thorn of Gypsy Rose. On November 11, 2013, Nick pled no contest to disorderly conduct. He was fined $210.80, payable in $25 monthly installments starting December 15th. The concealed weapon charge was dismissed. In her 2024 memoir, Gypsy claims she had no clue about Nick's McDonald's arrest until her own 2015 arrest. But a supplemental police report by Stan Hancock, November 29, 2017, cited Into the Weeds podcast, states that Nick had sent Gypsy a video in which he discussed the arrest freely. On June 20th, 2013, he sent 2 videos titled Trial Video. In her equally slapdash collaboration conversations on the eve of freedom, Gypsy ups the inaccuracy by stating Nick had a conviction for indecent exposure. From the 26th to the 29th of June 2013, DeeDee and Gypsy attended the Olay Conference in Hyannis, Massachusetts. The Olay Foundation for the Uninitiated is a nonprofit offering education, advocacy, and community for those reliant on tube feedings or IV nutrition. Their trip was funded through donations raised via their Facebook page, Gypsy's Trips. Contributions from people who believed, with good reason, that Gypsy's medical needs were genuine. At the time of DeeDee's death in 2015, they were once again raising funds for a second Olay trip, this time to New York. By June 2013, Gypsy was a month shy of her 22nd birthday. She was sexually active. She has a boyfriend offering her a home and a future. She knew she could walk. She had already admitted to trying to unalive her mom, yet she willed herself into a conference for seriously ill children and entered 3 award categories, including Child of the Year. She did not win, which one suspects did not sit well with her. Gypsy would later claim she was physically and emotionally abused by DeeDee and forced to say she couldn't walk. These allegations have been repeated widely, but they do not explain why, as an adult, she never told doctors, friends, or her boyfriend the truth, nor why she actively participated in the deception for years, benefiting from it in the process. Meanwhile, DeeDee was still driving a 20-year-old van, hardly the transport of someone obsessed with the status or luxury. The money raised did not go into flashy purchases, but into sustaining a carefully crafted image and providing for Gypsy. And here's the complexity. Gypsy did have genuine medical problems. DeeDee may well have believed her daughter's health would deteriorate further because of her chromosomal microdeletion disorder. But despite knowing Gypsy could walk, she continued to tell people the otherwise. Whether out of fear of losing medical access, misguided protection, or because the story had long since taken on a momentum of its own. And Gypsy even said that she didn't even tell her mom that she could walk. That, like, her mom found out when she ran away to Dan, that she lied to her mom. So there's that. DeeDee's motives were more layered than greed alone. They were shaped by genuine belief, fear of her daughter's future health, and a desire to secure resources she felt were necessary, even if it meant crossing moral and legal lines. But Gypsy was no helpless child. She was an adult who knew the truth, who had multiple opportunities to speak out, leave home, or tell supporters the reality. She chose not to. She stayed, played the part, and reaped the rewards. When they returned from the conference, they were welcomed home by David and Kim Blanchard, at least one of whom, and likely both, knew the truth about her mobility. October 7, 2013, DeeDee contacted police to report that both license plates had been stolen from her 2001 Ford van. Whether that theft happened at home or elsewhere remains unclear. Let me see. In October 2014, Gypsy's Revenge, co-starring her self-effacing yet strangely ever-present Aaliyah Woodmansey, recounts how, after at least 2 years of silence, Gypsy began messaging Aaliyah again. Gypsy opens with, "This is my personal account. My mom is still overprotective, so she doesn't know about this one." She gushes about wonderful Nick, her first boyfriend, their plans to marry and name their kids, and the names already chosen for their future children, Nicholas or Gabriella. Gypsy claims I'm 18, Nick is 24. In reality, Gypsy was 23, and she knew she was 23. Notably absent from those messages any talk of Nick being a vampire or of Gypsy being afraid of him. Aaliyah says she felt uncomfortable talking to Gypsy behind DeeDee's back, so she allowed the friendship to fade. This interesting contrast to what she told a detective in 2015 after DeeDee's unaliving. Gypsy had gotten upset with Aaliyah and blocked her from her Facebook. So whose decision was it really, Aaliyah's or Gypsy's? On November 13, 2014, Gypsy messaged Aaliyah, "Help me, sis. The perfect moment, perhaps to finally ask for help to escape her miserable life." Nope. Gypsy wanted Aaliyah's help perpetuating a lie. Years later, in Gypsy's Truth and Lies, Gypsy described Aaliyah as an angel that could do no wrong. In her 2015 prison interview, that angel had become a bully. Aaliyah claims there were no further contact after November 2014 until Gypsy's arrest in June 2015. At that point, Aaliyah had begun attending every preliminary hearing, now accompanied by Megan J. Pack, self-proclaimed expert on the case, an Olympic standard jumper from sitting on the fence to joining the bandwagon. From someone who repeatedly says she wants no media attention, Aaliyah appears in the final image on the right, smiling into the very camera she says she avoids. Aaliyah's first reaction when the case broke in 2015 was telling, "I don't believe all blame should be put on DeeDee." It's a sentiment quickly abandoned once the public narrative shifted. And then there's a 2015 interview in which Aaliyah said of DeeDee, "That woman was practically unaliving herself, constantly trying to help Gypsy." Possibly the truest thing she's ever said, though it sits awkwardly alongside her later portrayals of DeeDee. The following Facebook messages between Gypsy and Aaliyah, dated October 12, 2014, were obtained in a 2025 FOIA request made by Into the Weeds podcast. In Gypsy's revenge, Gypsy claimed, "I couldn't trust Aaliyah because my mother was starting to put things in my head that Aaliyah wasn't my true friend and that she was a bad influence on me. So I couldn't be friends with her anymore." All DeeDee's fault again. Isn't it ironic? Everything's DeeDee's fault. But in the actual 2014 messages, Gypsy wrote, "I heard rumors that when we were friends, you was making fun of me behind my back, so I stopped being your friend. My mom and I didn't like you after." Yes, DeeDee may have repeated those rumors, but Gypsy herself takes ownership for ending the friendship. That's not DeeDee pulling the strings, that's Gypsy making the choice. We could almost end the analysis there, given Gypsy's next line begins with, "Well, I'll be honest," a phrase that in hindsight should come with a disclaimer. The real bombshell, Gypsy tells Aaliyah, "They found out I have a chromosome deletion. That's why I have medical issues." Boom. In 2014, a 23-year-old Gypsy knew she had a chromosome disorder. In 2014, Aaliyah knew Gypsy had a chromosome disorder. And Gypsy states outright that this explains the medical issues she had. So why has this never appeared in a single post-unaliving documentary starring Gypsy? Why didn't it serve in any of Aaliyah's oh so reluctant but somehow frequent media appearances? In the same exchange, Gypsy tells Aaliyah her health is stable now. No thanks offered to DeeDee for the years of medical management it took to get there. Just a passing mention before turning to this. "Well, my mom's health has gotten worse over the years. She got diabetes, health problems, glaucoma, liver disease, kidney failure, Parkinson's disease, and then, without a hint of irony, Mom and I are going to Disney World again in January. Stable health, courtesy of DeeDee's endless appointments and interventions. And the priority is yet another trip to Disney." Fast forward to 2024. Gypsy now claims she didn't learn about the chromosome disorder until she was imprisoned in 2015 and suggests it was just a coincidence that she had all the illnesses associated with it. She says she found a chromosome test order in 2012, despite medical records showing she was diagnosed in 2011. For DeeDee Blanchard, it was business as usual at 2103 West Volunteer Way, Springfield, which almost certainly meant juggling Gypsy's health needs, attempting to curb her daddy issues, and managing her own deteriorating body. One, one imagines she was always dosing herself with enough anxiety medication to fill a horse, simply to keep pace with everything Gypsy had, and was putting herself through. On January 19, 2014, DeeDee, or Gypsy, the Facebook authorship was always a toss-up, posted that DeeDee was going to the hospital. It would be, the post noted, the first mother-daughter has ever slept in separate beds. A year later, on January 24, 2015, another update. DeeDee had been taken to the hospital by ambulance. The reason? A kidney stone lodged in her urethra. An agony so acute it had been linked to trying to pass a barbed wire fence. It had to be broken down into smaller stones so she could pass them. Anyone who's ever been there will tell you it's not a walk it off situation. A perfect opportunity, you might think, for a desperately unhappy Gypsy to make her escape. Sling the hook, vanish, but she didn't. Instead, in January 2015, DeeDee and Gypsy were back at Disney World in Florida, courtesy of Make-A-Wish Foundation, where 22-year-old Gypsy met the cast of Harry Potter at Universal Studios. DeeDee's health was now in steep decline, and Gypsy would have known it. But priorities are priorities. I know you're sick, Mama, and have trouble getting around, but we're going to Disney World because I'm the special one. Meanwhile, DeeDee was working to raise funds for the LA Foundation Conference in New York, scheduled for June 29th through July 3rd, 2015. A Facebook page, the Gypsy Road Trip, was created to promote the trips, managed tellingly by a member of the VisionCon community. The same crowd who all believed Gypsy was a fragile, terminally ill child. The page described wheelchair-bound, feeding-tube-fed Gypsy as having chromosome defects, muscular dystrophy, mild MR heart disease, hearing and vision impairment, a history of leukemia, asthma, allergies, and nocturnal hypoventilation, to mention just a few of her supposed issues. Yet no one in that community thought to question how this little girl, allegedly at death's door, managed to power through so many jam-packed weekends at VisionCon. Even one of DeeDee's siblings proposed to the appeal. Please help my beloved niece be blessed with top-notch medical treatment. This, despite the fact that DeeDee's siblings did not believe anything was seriously wrong with Gypsy, which circles us back to the obvious question: why didn't 23-year-old Gypsy leave when DeeDee was in the hospital or recovering at home? She had full access to DeeDee's safe, full access to the pharmacy in the cupboard that was DeeDee's medication stash. She had Nick actively encouraging her to go, ready to rescue her. She had a fully functioning pair of legs. Why didn't she leave? In our humble opinion, because it would have left DeeDee breathing. According to Nick, Pew Pew and DeeDee with the BBGUN wasn't Gypsy's first attempt to unalive her mother. In a 2019 prison interview, he recalled, she warned me that she had tried to take her out twice. She only mentioned one of these times in the media. The other, apparently, she almost got close to unaliving her mother, but she couldn't do it. She attempted to do it mainly for someone she had an infatuation with. She warned me that she tried it twice before. She only mentioned one of those times in the media. The other time, apparently, she almost got close to unaliving her mom, but she couldn't do it. She was attempting to do it mainly for someone she had an infatuation for, and apparently found out later that's just infatuation, but the person keeps using her to this day. The only person evidence suggests Gypsy ever had an infatuation with is Dan. If that's true, she's already tried twice before meeting Nick. Was he really the great love she later claimed, or simply the next tool to achieve the same end? The one attempt that she's admitted to publicly is the BBGUN, the other still unknown. Nick says she had been pushing him to unalive DeeDee for over a year before it happened, probably closer to 2. He told her no over and over. She tried every tactic: guilt, flattery, emotional pressure. She knew about his neurodevelopmental disorder, understood his vulnerabilities, and yet used them to her advantage. And still, for a long time, he resisted. By mid 2014, Nick was starting to question her stability. On May 16, 2014, he opened up to someone he called Sis, later identified as Allie Noble. According to court records, she knew about the plan in detail. Nick told her an earlier unaliving plot had been dropped because Gypsy changed her mind more than a year before DeeDee actually died. 2 separate near attempts. 2 windows of opportunity where Gypsy could have just simply left. 2 occasions when DeeDee was still alive, caring for her daughter, while her daughter quietly planned otherwise. 18 minutes after telling Sis about the aborted plan, Nick asked her, "Yes, Sis, I have to ask you something. How crazy do you think Gypsy is? You won't hurt my feelings or anything. I really want to know, though, since I just obviously can't tell if she is. I just can't seem to put in words how crazy I think she is." Sis replied, "Well, I don't know how to put it into words either, but I will be honest with you. I would not unalive my mom or anyone else unless they tried to unalive me first." It's worth noting Sis was never called to testify at Nick's trial. We would have liked to have known why Sis never alerted anyone of the plan to unalive DeeDee Blanchard. We'd also be interested to know if either Nick or Gypsy messaged Sis on June 14, 2015, the day one of her Facebook photos was liked by Nicholas Bella Rose, aka Gypsy's secret Facebook account. Liked on a day when Nick and Gypsy were hiding out at Nick's house following DeeDee's unaliving. For Nick, doubts about Gypsy's mental state should have been his exit point, but by then, she had been weaving her story into his life for nearly 2 years. He clung to the hope that unaliving DeeDee would be necessary, that maybe he could meet her would never be necessary. He clung to the hope that unaliving DeeDee would never be necessary, that maybe he could meet her, win her over, and avoid it all. And that's when Gypsy adjusted the script. DeeDee would meet Nicholas Godejohn. DeeDee would meet Nicholas Godejohn, see him as the perfect match for her frail daughter, and everything would fall into place. At least that's how Gypsy sold it. The Nick meets DeeDee plan wasn't some spur of the moment teenage rebellion. Adult Gypsy set into place 3 months at a time. She posted on her secret Facebook profile, 3 months until I experienced true love and a kiss I'll never forget. From there, she micromanaged everything, choosing the exact outfit Nick would wear, buying it and mailing it to him, sending him the money for his return Greyhound ticket. How did she pull all that off without her captor knowing? Did she steal the clothes, sneak to the post office alone, or did DeeDee know all along? In interviews from 2017 to 2018, Gypsy never explains where the funds for the trip came from. In 2017, Gypsy told filmmakers, she said to Nick, "I'll buy your ticket and you come to the movie theater." In another interview the same year, she again said he took the Greyhound bus. Still no mentions of where the money comes from. 2018, she told yet another crew, "So we got our bus tickets and he came to Springfield." Again, no details. Then came Nick's 2018 trial, where Gypsy testified under oath. "I stole the money from my mother and sent it to him via the mail." So much for the helpless captive narrative. Where was DeeDee during all this time? The ever watchful owner of the prize bull. just calmly watching men's clothes appear, lingerie orders pile up, whipped cream disappear, and a neon pink bikini materialize. Either DeeDee was losing her grip or Gypsy was better at running the household than we was ever led to believe. The truth is, Gypsy was juggling multiple online personas. There are whispers that Gypsy wasn't just role playing for Nick, that she had paying fans, maybe men with reputations to protect, which might explain why DeeDee's vigilance was faltering by 2015, or why tensions in the house was reaching a point where both knew something had to give. By 2015, it's worth asking who was really in charge. Was DeeDee worn out, sick, and turning a blind eye? Has she threatened to expose what Gypsy was doing, or has she just given up trying to keep up? The usual question has been, what was DeeDee doing to stop Gypsy from leaving? We already know the answer, nothing. The real question is, why did Gypsy want DeeDee gone? For Nick, this trip wasn't just about romance. It was the moment Gypsy shifted the plan from fantasy to reality, wrapping her manipulation in the language of true love, knowing exactly which strings to pull. In her second memoir, to pay for his bus ticket, a direct contradiction of her sworn trial testimony that she stole money from her mom, DeeDee. But then, consistency was never part of Gypsy's strong skill set. On or around March 9th, Nicholas Godejohn, packed as if he was heading to a royal ball rather than a midweek Greyhound, traveled nearly 600 miles from Big Bend, Wisconsin to Springfield, Missouri. His mission, to meet DeeDee and Gypsy at a Cinderella screening planned for the 12th. It's a long way to go for a cinema date, but we know Nick was already in Springfield on the 9th thanks to his Papa John's receipt for a hotel delivery that evening. Perhaps not quite the stuff of fairy tales, but everyone has to eat. The master plan was for Gypsy and Nick to accidentally bump into each other at the cinema as if strangers. Not much of a challenge considering DeeDee, Gypsy, and Nick were the only ones there. Gypsy would then introduce her Prince Charming to her mother. DeeDee would instantly adore him, and they'd all live happily ever after. At least that's how Gypsy liked to tell it. Gypsy claims DeeDee despised Nick on sight, branded him creepy and weird for attending a children's film alone. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you so much for the rose and the donut. Thank you. He didn't have a kid with him or a girlfriend or nothing, she laughed in one interview, even though she was the one who orchestrated the exact scenario and was watching the movie dressed as Cinderella. Gypsy's accounts vary, no surprise there. But in one, she says DeeDee moved a few seats away and told Gypsy to follow. In order terrified of DeeDee, Gypsy claims she ignored. Yet photographs from the day show both DeeDee and Gypsy looking perfectly cheerful, hardly the visual evidence of a seat-moving standoff. Unless the photographer, one of the only three people present, had a magic way of making arguments vanish. Nick, for his part, remembered DeeDee being really nice to him, always nice, in fact. A neighbor even claimed DeeDee approved of the relationship, which, if true, would make Nick a marked upgrade from Gypsy's previous choice, Dan Gladwell. Thank you, Kels and Kush. Thank you guys so much for the gifts. What happened next depends on whose script you're reading. According to Nick, Gypsy wanted to have sex, so they did in the men's bathroom. According to Gypsy, it happened in a handicap cell. The symbolism writes itself. What's less clear is how DeeDee, allegedly convinced Nick was creepy and dangerous, did not follow the pair out of the empty cinema. Either DeeDee suddenly lost all maternal vigilance, or she wasn't nearly as concerned as Gypsy later claimed. Gypsy's story continues. They argued, DeeDee slapped her, and Gypsy spiraled into desperate thoughts about freedom and the ideal life. Nick, however, remembers none of this, which might explain why in 2017, Gypsy agreed with Dr. Phil's summary that DeeDee knew none the better after the restroom rendezvous. The story Gypsy fed Nick. Nick recalls in the police interview. I don't know what it was, but apparently the night got ruined in some way. I was trying to understand what was going on with her mom. Ruined? From Nick's perspective, it was an all-around success, complete with the fairy tale princess, a private cinema, and what he thought was a mutual happily ever after in progress. Translating as someone's story is a lie. Let's all take a wild guess as to whose. The guy who barely changes his account over the years, or the woman whose versions shapeshift more often than a soap opera plotline. In 2024, Gypsy revised her decade-old tale, claiming they didn't actually have sex because she was forced to wear a diaper, a detail that somehow had not surfaced in any of her previous retellings. She also insisted she left the bathroom a virgin, though other evidence suggests that milestone had been crossed long before the popcorn started popping. In her 2015 police interview, Gypsy claimed DeeDee later told Nick exactly how she felt during a phone argument. Nick has never mentioned such call. Good try, Gyp. Who knows? In her next memoir, perhaps DeeDee will have expressed her disapproval via smoke signal or carrier pigeon. God forbid there's another one. Once Nick was safely back to Missouri, he says Gypsy told him she had sent DeeDee a bouquet of flowers as if from him, a sweet little PR campaign to win the mother-in-law vote. Nick even claims she showed him a picture of the receipt, which begs the question, why would Gypsy send flowers to a woman she later claimed despised Nick so much she slapped her in public? Either this was the most passive-aggressive bouquet in Missouri, or someone's narrative is starting to smell less like roses. In a 2024 FOIA request, and a 2024 FOIA request revealed that Nick's search history included Springfield, Missouri flower services. That doesn't prove his version, but it does poke a hole in Gypsy's. In her 2018 prison interview, Gypsy goes in for the drama. She, DeeDee, had ordered me to stay away from him. And needless to say, that was a very long argument that lasted a couple of weeks. Yelling, throwing things, calling me names. Bitch, slut, whore. Did that really happen, or was DeeDee too busy enjoying her flowers and telling the neighbors that Nick was a nice boy? According to Gypsy, she told a bewildered Nick their plan had failed and that DeeDee hated him. Thank you, Janie. Which left, apparently, only one option. DeeDee had to go. At Nick's 2018 trial, the questioning was blunt. After this meeting at the movies, did you ask him to unalive your mother? Yes. Did you ask him, will you unalive my mother for me? I probably did. Yes, sir. There's no probably about it. Even if DeeDee had been open to Nick, Gypsy still wanted her DEAD. Because it wasn't Nick that Gypsy wanted. It was Dan. In April 2015, a burglary at DeeDee's house left her nervous ever since. Over $1,000 in cash and prescription meds gone. The police supplemental report hints at certain people in the neighborhood causing trouble, but names aren't given. Pure speculation, of course, but one might guess the culprit's name to start with a G and end with a Y, and that the loot might have ended up with Dan Gladwell. The final months of DeeDee's life looks like a siege, not for Gypsy, but for DeeDee. In her December 2024 fabricated memoir, Gypsy completely skips over the slapping incident that she reported in 2018 when she claims DeeDee took her to the bathroom at the cinema and hit her. She took me to the bathroom and she slapped me. In her new version, there's no slap, no confrontation, just DeeDee stepping outside and explicitly leaving her daughter in the clutches of weird, creepy Nick. There's also a new, never before mentioned repercussion. She was taken home and locked in a pink painted shed with a dirt floor. Small problem. The shed was blue, always blue, and carpeted. No dirt floor inside. At Nick's 2018 trial, Gypsy is asked, at some point you decided to off your mother, is that correct? Yes, sir. When? About a year before it happened. Whose idea was it? Mine. Who initially brought it up? I did. Who talked who into unaliving your mom? I did. I talked him into it. Why? Because I wanted to be free of her hold on me. Notice, not free from ABUSD, but free from her hold. Subtle wording, but telling. The answer of someone thinking in terms of control, not survival. Also, not exactly the line you expect from a cowering victim, more the language of a person calling the shots. Now compare this to Gypsy in 2017. On camera, the unaliving morphs into an indirect idea between her and Nick. A casual, even my mom, tossed into the conversation is, yeah, and suddenly it's plan B. A plan they supposedly kept pushing back. Same again in Gypsy's 2018 Gypsy's Revenge. But the moment she's under oath, no gentle back and forth, just flat out ownership. Her idea, her push, her persuasion, then like clockwork, she changes tack. Later in 2018, she's claiming Nick had her as victor to unalive DeeDee. The goalposts don't just move, they vanish entirely and reappear wherever she needs them. Nick's story is stay steady. January 2018, all the planning she did, every bit of it. She pretty much wielded the knife in my hand. She was the mastermind behind the entire thing. And police records show Gypsy researching poisons, arsons, GUN, everything except the obvious option. Walk out the door. By 2019 on Dr. Phil, Gypsy's back to pointing at Nick. He chose the weapon, the method, the number of STABS. Never mind that she already sent him a cheerful video tutorial complete with forced motions for reference. Her reasoning for choosing the stabbing was, I didn't want her to suffer. What? You didn't want her to suffer? So you chose that way? She's going to suffer that way. Which is a strange way to describe 17 backstabs and 2 deep cuts to the neck. That's not mercy, that's theater. Nick remembers it differently. Gypsy asked, how badly do you want to be with me? And he said, I'll do anything. Her response, as long as her mom was alive, they couldn't be together. He suggested running away. She shut it down every time. So inch by inch, she walked him into a corner until that was the only option left. There's a phrase for that. It's called rooming. She knew his devotion, knew he'd do anything to be with her, and she played him like a violin. Gypsy Blanchard wanted DeeDee DEAD, and she found the perfect instrument. A man so besotted that when she put the knife in his hand, he thought it was his choice. Gypsy admits in her Dr. Phil interview that she did ask Nick to unalive DeeDee, but quickly softens it with, but I didn't put a GU into his head. Girl. True, just a knife in his hand. And a belief in his heart there was no other way to save the girl he loved from the torment and the ABUSC she swore she was suffering. Oh, and the occasional promise of sex without limits. Gypsy describes Nick to Dr. Phil as, I think he used me to have his own means. He was a lonely person, not a lot of friends. Girls would never look at him. So I was the only one who would never tell him no. I would always agree to everything he said and do it with a smile. And I think he saw that in me. She even tells Dr. Phil that Nick deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison because he used her. which is so freaking rich, considering she had been having thoughts of unaliving DeeDee before Nick entered the picture. So who was using who exactly? In a 2018 news report, Gypsy says of Nicholas, "I don't hate him. I feel sorry for him, and just that somebody could do something so heartless and not express remorse. He does not feel like he's responsible for it." Meanwhile, in the same report, Nick said, "I did what I did because I loved her. I really wanted a life with her. I really did." Nick has never denied his role in DeeDee's unaliving. The difference, Gypsy doesn't see herself as a unaliver at all. The weeks before the unaliving was a blur of explicit messages from Gypsy to Nick, not exactly the tone of a terrified, desperate prisoner. May 30th, 2015, 7:39. I look forward to cuddles. 7:40 p.m. I dreamt about you. You gave me oral. 7:47. Will you give me my first or soon, my love? Will you on the bus? I desire pleasure, hon. The bus being the Greyhound they plan to escape on after DeeDee's unaliving. 8:06 p.m. The first movie I want to watch with you is 50 Shades of Grey. I also think we should start a soft before the big time. June 4th, 12:38 p.m. Warning, I'm in a very sexual mood. June 10th, 1:08 a.m. It's getting close to time. 1:12 a.m. Thank you. You're my hero, and I will never leave you. I will stay with you for eternity. This is the same woman who tells Dr. Phil I would always agree to everything he said and do it with a smile. Indeed. But when you're the one feeding the script, that's not an agreement. That's direction. So when Gypsy paints herself as this naive girl swept up in Nick's dark designs, the only question left is, what kind of fool does she take us for? On the 22nd of April 2015, Nick exchanges in a series of Facebook messages with a girl called Laura. We're assuming Laura is a woman Nick once had an online relationship with. Nick. Yeah, like I said, I'm different. And actually, you didn't see a side of me that the woman I'm with now knows about. And it still didn't scare her off. It's called true love, Laura. Laura, I have that now. You have no idea what I've been through with my husband. It was a lot worse than what I went through with you. And I'm still here by his side. Nick. Yeah, well, me and the one I'm with are defying the laws of nature to stay together. It is as bad as it can be. I won't tell you what I'll have to do to stay with her, but I'll do it if it means keeping her. Laura. Actually, Nick, I'm in the same boat. People have threatened to blank me, my husband, and my daughter for me to leave him. I still haven't. There are demons in this world that are destined to keep me and him apart, but I'm not letting them tear us apart. Nick. I see. Well, you don't understand how bad it really is for me. I mean, you may know a nugget of it, but not the full story. I can't share it. It must stay between me and her. Laura. This is the same between me and him. If I even think of telling someone, my life is on the line. I could be off any day now. Nick. Well, someone else's life is on the line, and that's all I can say. Sorry. Laura. You think I don't know who it is, but I do. I got into a whole nother world and life that I knew nothing about until I met him. Tim or him? Nick. Believe me, Laura, you don't know what I'm talking about. Just keep it at that. I can't say any more. Laura. I'm not asking you to say any more. I know what you're talking about. Nick. Tell me, then, if you're so confident in that you know. Laura. What I'm talking about are the demons and spirits from another world. The wicked world of the afterlife. Nick. Well, that is something completely different from what I'm experiencing, and we'll have to deal with soon. So you don't know what I'm talking about, but it must stay between me and her. I guess it has to. Laura, completely different? What could be worse than the chaos dragon and the ruler of the spirit world and afterlife threatening to flank her whole family for staying with one person? Laura, I have ghosts haunting me. Laura, possessing Tim. Have tried to off me. Holy crap. His ex-girlfriend, why didn't they stay together? She seems just as crazy as him. But then so did Gypsy, so never mind. Nick, well, you are in a whole different dilemma than me. But once I do what I must do, I'll have to disappear from a place on earth, possibly for the rest of my life. And she'll have to come with me and leave all her past behind her. Laura, we were the same way when I joined the coven. Nick, well, the one I am with is aware of this stuff too, but I can't say anymore. I'm shutting up about what me and her must do in the future. Laura, I have to do things I hate, terrible things that I hate just to keep him. Nick, I would be surprised if you were in the exact spot as me. Laura, you would be surprised. Laura, Nick, I have to have sex with Tim in ways I hate in order to keep him. I make deals with the devil and have to do as he says, otherwise I lose. Nick, wow. And just think if we would have been together, you wouldn't have went down that path. The one I'm with is aware of those things. However, I will have to do the unthinkable just to keep me and her safe. And I must say, please never come around me. It's that I worry for the sake of him, not you. I would never hurt you, even to this day. What it sounds like he is putting you through, it makes me sad. Even though it does, I can't open up about my situation, even if I wanted to. In truth, I do. But I can't, as you know, me being a Taurus, the most loyal sign of the zodiac. If I say anything, it would be betrayal myself as much as I would be betraying her. I can't do that to her. But I'll let you know. I hope you stay safe, even if you have to do things that are BDSM related. What the freak? It's as Nick's simultaneously trying to keep Gypsy's secret and desperately wanting someone to drag it out of him. But Laura's too busy bargaining with the devil, literally in her version, to notice. In hindsight, these lines read less like vague drama and more like a soundtrack to a very real countdown. Nick frames everything through Gypsy, the one that I am with, and the looming act is cast not as choice, but as a grim, unavoidable requirement of keeping her. That's not just loyalty, that's a man so deep in someone else's narrative that the ending feels pre written. 7 weeks later, DeeDee is. And Laura? She was probably still arguing with the Chaos Dragon. On March 29, 2015, during a Skype chat, Nick let something slip. Gypsy went on a mother's type group of Facebook and talked about our story on what we plan on doing. We were planning on having a baby next year as a way to stay together, so her mom had no choice but to let us be together. This was Nick's big plan. This was Nick's big plan, or at least the plan Gypsy let him believe in. The baby wasn't just a child in his mind, but it was the master key to life. But then he saw comments from strangers telling Gypsy she could find someone better. And instead of defending him, she typed, "Wow, okay, I'm awake." Poor Nick. Gypsy didn't see him as a future father. She saw him as a tool to get what she wanted, and fatherhood wasn't it. Fast forward to May 2015, not long after their sexual encounter in the men's disabled toilet. Evidence suggests Gypsy tells Nick she's pregnant. Text messages to Gypsy from Nick, May 30, 2015. "So you want me to get you pregnant again?" Gypsy evens up the emotional ante. It's a girl. And Nick, whose dream was to have a daughter, swallows the whole thing without a flicker of suspicion. No wondering how she knew the sex so soon. No wondering how she could be pregnant when he wore a condom and didn't even finish the job. No wondering if the baby is even his. The condom, by the way, wasn't even Nick's idea. It came from his mother, Stephanie. She heard about the Facebook post where Gypsy announced they were trying for a baby. Mortified, Stephanie had talked with him, and Nick promised they'd hold off. Gypsy, however, just found another angle. Years later, from prison, Gypsy would allege to another inmate that Nick's desire for a daughter was sexual, a claim directly contradicted by newly released 2025 court documents, which show it was Gypsy who told Nick their hypothetical daughter had to lose her virginity to Nicholas. And just as suddenly as she became pregnant, Gypsy had a miscarriage. Her explanation, DeeDee forced her to have her feeding tube changed, and that caused the loss of the baby. Except Nick couldn't have fathered the child. The child didn't exist, and Gypsy's records show no miscarriage. The same records show no feeding tube change in April or May of 2015. In Nick's 2018 trial, when asked, "Did you do anything to prepare for having a child with Nick?" Gypsy cheerfully replied, "Yes, I stole baby clothes and things for a child." And when asked if she was worried about her mother catching her, she would have been on a different aisle or a different section of the store. It was the same casual boldness she shown in 2012 when she stole craft supplies from Hobby Lobby. DeeDee's house might have been piled high like a hoarder's dream, but there's one thing sitting in plain view: a world of baby names. Not exactly the light reading of a 40-year-old mother of one. Gypsy wasn't hiding these things. She was daring DeeDee to see them. On October 2nd, 2024, MPG Cornerstone Nation, Nicholas Godejohn support group, dropped a never-before-seen video they claim Gypsy sent to Nick after their cinema date. In it, she lays out a follow-up get pregnant plan. It gives context to Nick's May 30th, 2015 text to her. "So you want me to get you pregnant again?" In the video, Gypsy tells Nick where we should do this, offering two romantic venues: the greenhouse, actually a large green shed behind her house, a neighbor's yard. Both, she assures him, would give them the privacy to do what they needed to do. And both were far enough from her house that DeeDee wouldn't find them if she came looking. MPG Cornerstone Nation alleged this encounter was scheduled for the night of June 9, 2015. That would be good, nice and dark, or the early morning hours of June 10th. That's right, another plan was apparently on the table for the night DeeDee died, a plan to get Gypsy pregnant. In the video, Gypsy notes DeeDee's absence from the house because her car isn't in the driveway, which is odd. Gypsy's story has always been that DeeDee smothered her, monitored her, never left her alone. The blueprint was simple. Nick would travel down, impregnate Gypsy in either the rusted old shed or miss the foliage of a neighbor's yard, and then head home. The video had no timestamp. There's speculation Gypsy was walking when she filmed it. Supporting neighbors reports of seeing Gypsy moving freely in the area, but more likely she was in her motorized wheelchair. The faint whirl of the motor is audible as she rides up the ramp of the house. For some reason, the plan was never carried out. Instead, DeeDee's unaliving was. In December 2024, Gypsy finally admitted to the pregnancy and the shed plan in her dreadful memoir. We have little doubt this confession was damage control after the video surfaced, the sort of reluctant honesty that only arrives when the evidence is already public. Even then, she couldn't quite own it. Instead, she claims the idea was the product of a brainstorming session with Nick, as if she was an unwilling co-architect in her own scheme. In the same book, she insists DeeDee never allowed her to use her motorized wheelchair. Curious, then, that it was conveniently fully charged and operational for the video tour of her chosen love nest. Newly released court documents show that May 22nd, 2015, the day that Gypsy sent Nick her instructional How to Unalive DeeDee video, was busier than she ever admitted. That same day, Gypsy took 5 photographs of the inside of DeeDee's room, including shots of DeeDee asleep. In 2018, Gypsy told ABC News she was too afraid to reach out to anyone for help. I beat myself up about that all the time, but I have to understand my mind frame back then. I was so afraid of her. Apparently not so afraid that she couldn't tiptoe in, camera in hand, while DeeDee slept. FOIA documents obtained by Hello Starlight also reveal that on the same day, Gypsy sent Nick photos of herself holding the very knife that she had stolen, the one they used on a live DeeDee. She also told him she was pretty much packed: clothes, personal information, papers, trinkets. Yep, I'm all ready. Nick's conviction hinged partly on his own admission that just before entering DeeDee's bedroom, he paused for at least a minute to think about if he really wanted to go through with it, a sign of premeditation. However, Gypsy, however, was already packed 2.5 weeks earlier. If that's not premeditation, what is? Even more curious, the Anastasia photo set was like, even more curious, the Anastasia photo set was liked by DeeDee Blanchard, the Facebook account Gypsy shared with DeeDee. That either means DeeDee was perfectly fine with her daughter's erotic role play, or Gypsy had complete control over the joint social media, which is much more likely. Court documents released in 2025 add another layer. The same day, just over a week before DeeDee's unaliving, Nick threatened to unalive himself. His defense later claimed that Gypsy herself had been making those type of threats in 2013, and that Nick's own threats simply mimic a behavior he learned from her. 2 days later, on June 5th, the VIP child was photographed at the Dickerson Zoo in Springfield, ironically posing outside the reptile house. DeeDee, diabetic and obese, was probably in no mood to trek around a zoo. But what the precious one wanted, the precious one got. After all, keeping up appearances mattered. Even in the afternoon doubled as a farewell tour in Gypsy's private calendar. Pictures taken at the zoo show a smiling Gypsy, basking in the sunshine and attention, despite knowing her mother had only days left to live. The same evening, while DeeDee likely dozed from exhaustion, Gypsy was messaging Nick about what color restraints to pack for their post-unaliving reunion. 9:50, Gypsy, darling, what color restraints do you want, pink or black? 9:52, Nick, dear, we're collecting them, but you get black, sweetie. 9:56, Gypsy, okay, darling. Conflicting feelings? Sure, black or pink. And somewhere between the zoo and home, a dozen of Krispy Kreme donuts were purchased at 3:46 p.m., according to crime scene receipts. Adding one final irony, a calendar in DeeDee's bedroom shows an upcoming trip planned for Jurassic World on June 12, 2015, 2 days after she was unalive. That poor, isolated child with no freedom to have fun. A FOIA document shared by Into the Weeds podcast on June 26, 2025 reveals that DeeDee did indeed file a police report for a burglary at her home, allegedly occurring on the evening of April 17, 2015, while she was out to Walmart. According to DeeDee, $56 vanished, along with roughly 90 pills of hydrocodone, acetaminophen, 5 milligrams, about 75, that's Xanax, I think. In the report, DeeDee claims she had no idea who could have done it. We have an idea, and we suspect DeeDee had the same one. Police report seen below, courtesy. I don't know where all the pictures are, because it says like picture, picture, picture. You guys see that? Like picture, picture, picture. Where is the picture, picture, picture? There's a lot of speculation because Dan Glywell had an addiction problem. So, and Gypsy claimed she had one. That came out late. Now, Gypsy, when she was arrested, she was drug tested. There was nothing in her system, but she claimed she had this addiction, right? But there's a lot of speculation that when pills went missing, they went to Dan and not Gypsy. But yeah, you guys. So that is timeline. Before the next one is the night of the actual murder that we'll go over.